9. Bernard Bolliet. In early May of 2024, a gunman opened fire on a minister during a live-streamed sermon at a Pennsylvania church. Harrowing footage showed the suspect, later identified as 26-year-old Bernard Bolliet, attempting to shoot Pastor Glenn Germany on a Sunday afternoon at the Jesus' Dwelling Place Church in North Braddock. Germany could be seen ducking for cover in anticipation of a flying bullet, as more than 24 terrified parishioners looked on, including the preacher's own daughter. Thankfully, the gun jammed and nobody was killed. Germany later told local station WPXI that Bolliet smiled as he pointed the gun at him. Determined to stop the attempted shooter from unjamming the gun and firing successfully, the church's deacon, Clarence McAllister, sprang into action and tackled Bolliet to the floor. As the two men struggled on the ground, Germany rushed over and wrestled the gun away from the suspect. He and McAllister held Bolliet to the ground until the police arrived. Later that evening, the gunman's relatives discovered the murdered body of Bolliet's cousin, 56-year-old Derek Bolliet, at the suspect's home less than a half-mile from the church. Witnesses told investigators that they saw Bernard pacing around outside that morning. Around that time, a neighbor overheard a gunshot. The bullet found at the murder scene matched the weapon that was used in the attempted church shooting. Bolliet reportedly apologized to Germany for his actions, claiming that spirits got inside his head. The pastor forgave Bolliet, but the authorities are less keen on doing so. According to the most recent updates on the case, Bolliet remains held without bail at the Allegheny County Jail on charges of homicide, attempted criminal homicide, aggravated assault, and reckless endangerment of another person. 8. Eliza Jordana. Former Howard Stern writer Eliza Jordana went viral for all the wrong reasons in April 2024, following a disturbing YouTube live stream showing a violent fight with her boyfriend Scoro. The 35-year-old was broadcasting the video, titled "Not Doing Good," from her car in Palm Beach, Florida, when she began talking about how Scoro had sent thousands of dollars to another woman. Things began to get heated when Scoro's alleged mistress Sarah called into the live stream after seeing her phone number posted on the video. Jordana threatened to post the woman's explicit photos online while Sarah pleaded with her not to. When Scoro tried interjecting in the conversation, Jordana punched him in the arm. He apologized to Sarah as Jordana slapped him in the face and told him not to talk, by which point she'd already threatened to kill him several times throughout the video. Scoro could then be seen pulling Jordana's hair and forcing her out of the vehicle before the live stream ended. Within hours of the video appearing online, sheriff's deputies arrested Jordana on a felony domestic battery charge. In a public post following her arrest, she apologized for her actions but claimed to be the real victim in the situation. But law enforcement deemed her to be the aggressor after hearing both sides of the story. And now it's up to the court to decide whether Jordana is guilty of the allegations she faces. 7. Tenantzin Oris Beltran. While responding to multiple reports of a stabbing as a residence in San Rafael, California in January of 2024, police arrived to find a woman standing on a balcony with a bloody knife in her hand and her dying mother next to her. Later identified as 28-year-old Tenantzin Oris Beltran, the blood-soaked suspect now stands accused of stabbing the victim, 55-year-old Olivia Beltran, while broadcasting the horrific act of violence on Facebook Live. Some of the responding officers spoke with Beltran as she stood on the balcony, while a handful of other officers forced their way into the home and apprehended her. Olivia was found clinging to life and was rushed to the hospital, where she died from her injuries. The morning before Olivia's murder, Beltran was reportedly seen holding a knife in the lobby of the Santa Rosa Police Department in a TikTok video. She'd been arrested just hours earlier after a police pursuit and was at the police station with her mother to retrieve her impounded car. In the video, the seemingly disturbed young woman could be heard saying, "You have no idea what's waiting for you." Beltran pleaded not guilty to murder and remains in custody pending the outcome of her case. During her arraignment hearing 2 months after the incident, the defendant's relatives said that the victim had spent years trying to get desperately needed medical help from her daughter. The family urged for patience, respect, and compassion toward Beltran as the case works its way through the court system, and said they saw the not guilty plea as a step in the right direction. 6. Nermin Sulejanovic. In August of 2023, a 35-year-old Bosnian bodybuilder named Nermin Sulejanovic went live on Instagram with sinister plans. Standing in front of the camera with a gun in hand, he announced his intentions to commit a massacre. Sulejanovic then moved the camera to reveal an injured woman sitting on a blood-soaked patio in the town of Gradacac in the country's northeastern region. The victim was later identified as the fitness instructor's estranged wife, Nevzeta Hekimovic. In the video, Sulejanovic ordered the woman to tell him why she gave the police information about him. Severely weakened by her injuries and barely able to speak, Hekimovic responded that she feared for her life and the lives of her children. Sulejanovic then shot her in the head, killing her at the scene. According to Bosnian authorities, Hekimovic had previously reported Sulejanovic to the police for violence and threats. Sulejanovic had an extensive criminal history and known links to a violent drug cartel in the northern city of Tuzla, making him a frequent target of law enforcement investigations. After killing his ex and fleeing the scene, Sulejanovic went on to murder 2 more people and injured 3 others. Despite his obvious propensity for violence, his motives for killing the second and third victim are a mystery. By the time police caught up with Sulejanovic, he too was dead and had taken his innermost thoughts to the grave with him. According to the Associated Press, Bosnia remains plagued by the after-effects of its civil war, which ravaged the country during the 1990s. Domestic violence rates are especially high, but this particular incident stood out as particularly disturbing compared to most others, especially since so many people witnessed the carnage as it played out on video. 5. Jesus Rafael Diaz. Better known to his followers as Rafa Wayne, Uber driver Jesus Rafael Diaz was live streaming during his shift in late 2023 when he was met with unexpected violence in the Mexican border city of Ciudad Juarez. In the disturbing footage, Diaz's passengers could be heard demanding his phone and passcode. During the struggle that ensued, gunshots rang out before the live stream suddenly ended. Authorities later revealed that Diaz was fatally shot during the encounter. Unlike many influencers, Diaz had a peaceful social media presence. His videos, which typically showed him driving around passengers and offering life advice, didn't attract much controversy, making it hard to imagine who might want him dead. 2 teenage males were arrested following the senseless tragedy, including an 18-year-old man identified in a media release as Brian Alejandro. The 2 suspects were apprehended by police on suspicion of public intoxication after they were caught drinking alcohol in the street with another teen and 2 adult men. Once they were in custody, investigators questioned them about Diaz's murder. News reports state that the young men blamed each other for the crime. Police seized drugs and guns as part of their investigation into the murder, but have revealed few other details about the disturbing homicide. They also found Diaz's cell phone during a search of the suspect's belongings. According to the most recent available updates on the case, the suspects were in custody but hadn't yet been formally charged with Diaz's murder. 4. Bhairav Singh. In June of 2023, a man later identified as 31-year-old Bhairav Singh axed an elderly relative Ram Singh to death and left another victim critically injured while live streaming the crime on Facebook in the Indian village of Dosa Gando. After receiving reports about the murder, police rushed to the scene. Officers apprehended Bhairav in a wooded area shortly after the crime. According to law enforcement, the incident stemmed from a long-standing family dispute and grudges between 2 groups of relatives. In a second live video posted shortly after the attack, Bhairav could be heard saying that he'd repeatedly told certain individuals to return some construction materials and expressing his anger over the lack of help he received from his relatives in his attempts to get the materials back. In addition to being seen by online viewers, the disturbing murder was witnessed by the victim's daughter and granddaughter, who were in the home at the time. The attention the crime received due to being broadcasted on social media sparked widespread demands for Bhairav to be sentenced to death. Outraged civilians also called on the Indian government to try Bhairav's case through a specially designated fast-track court, which enables high-profile cases to work their way through the country's notoriously slow justice system at an expedited pace. Updates on the case have not been forthcoming, indicating that Bhairav is most likely in custody as he awaits trial. 3. Juan Huamalon. 57-year-old Philippine radio anchor Juan Tumpak Johnny Walker Huamalon was murdered in cold blood while broadcasting live from his home studio in the town of Calamba in November of 2023. Horrified onlookers were tuned in via Facebook Live when two armed men gained access to the studio by pretending to be fans. One of the gunmen held up the lobby while the other shot Huamalon twice in the head. A third accomplice waited outside on a getaway motorcycle while acting as a lookout. After shooting Huamalon, the killer snatched a gold chain from the DJ's neck and fled the scene with his co-conspirators. Disturbing footage from the livestream showed blood oozing from Huamalon's mouth while his theme song played eerily in the background. His family rushed him to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead. Sadly, the murder of a journalist in the Philippines is nothing new. In fact, the country is largely considered one of the most dangerous places in the world for journalists. Following Huamalon's death, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. condemned the shooting and vowed to bring the killers to justice. He ordered the national police to identify and locate the trio of suspects, but no arrest came until March of 2024, when law enforcement nabbed the shooter's alleged accomplices. Police arrested the accused shooter, Julieto Dumuag Mangumpit, the following month in the city of Dipolog. He was wanted on 8 outstanding warrants for murder and other crimes at the time of his arrest, indicating that he wasn't exactly a first-time criminal when he allegedly murdered Huamalon. The outcome of the case remains to be seen. 2. Nesaku. In a horrifying act of violence that was captured on video in May of 2024, a Brazilian influencer was shot in the head by suspected hitmen during a TikTok livestream. Known to his fans as Nesaku, the young man whose real name is Romim was smoking a cigarette and listening to music outside his home in Rio de Janeiro's Complexo do Alemão when he was ambushed by his killers. Multiple gunshots could be heard as the camera moved rapidly, making it impossible to see what was happening. But it was clear based on Nesaku's facial expression just before the shooting that his assassins had caught him off guard. After being struck by 4 bullets, Nesaku was rushed to the emergency room where he succumbed to his injuries. The reason for the fatal attack is unclear. According to one local news outlet, Nesaku's killers murdered him to settle a score, which may have been related to drug trafficking and organized crime. Authorities have failed to speculate on whether they believe this to be the case, and Nesaku's killers remain at large. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Harold Martin. In January of 2024, a Wisconsin man got into a shootout with Milwaukee police, leaving one officer with serious injuries. The armed standoff began when the cops responded to a domestic violence call at a local residence. According to law enforcement, a pregnant woman at the home accused the father of her children, 25-year-old Harold Martin, of assaulting and choking her. During a 911 call, the victim could be heard saying that Martin was armed and trying to kill her, with 4 children present in the home. The woman would later explain that she and Martin were not in a relationship, but that he didn't want her seeing other men and hid her cell phone. She then discovered text messages between Martin and another woman on his smartwatch and sent a text message to the woman from the device. Knowing Martin would be angry about the text message, the victim hid the watch. When Martin awoke and his ex refused to tell him where the watch was, he allegedly erupted into a fit of rage, at which point the physical violence began. Thankfully, the victim managed to escape and ran to a neighbor's residence, where she placed the 911 call. Officers tried negotiating with Martin in an attempt to gain his cooperation, but he reportedly refused to surrender. As the police approached the home, the suspect fired multiple shots through the front door. The officers returned fire and ran to the back of the home as the shooter continued to fire at them, leaving Officer Dan Morrell with a broken femur and a nicked femoral artery. Another officer was struck in the face by a piece of brick after the house was struck by a bullet. Thankfully, they both survived. At some point during the exchange of gunfire, Martin went live on Facebook. A child could be heard in the background, but authorities have released few other details about the video to the public. At some point during the broadcast, Martin told viewers that he was engaged in an active shootout with the police. He was eventually taken into custody and is now facing 7 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, along with strangulation and suffocation charges.
11. Distracted school bus driver. 48-year-old James Davenport was driving a school bus on a Tennessee highway in 2014 when he accidentally veered over a concrete median and collided with another bus. All 22 kids on the bus survived, but 2 children and a teacher's aide on the other sadly lost their lives. Police determined that Davenport was speeding by driving 57 miles per hour, or 92 kilometers per hour in a 40 mile per hour, or 64 kilometer per hour zone. He passed away from unrelated natural causes while the investigation was still underway, and was therefore never criminally charged for the role he played in the accident. Shortly after his death, authorities revealed that the disgraced bus driver was actually texting back and forth with a prostitute in the moments leading up to the crash. A search of Davenport's cell phone records revealed a conversation with the woman, 25-year-old Lacey Victoria Easterly, about whether he could take her to a court date the next day. When he didn't promise to take her, Easterly sent messages claiming that she had taken some drugs and was scared she had overdosed. She also discussed some of her escort ads, telling Davenport she might have to go on a call or two. Easterly continued to message Davenport for hours after the crash, unaware of what had happened. Local station WBIR reported that in her last text, she said she had found a new sugar daddy to take care of her needs. Investigators ultimately concluded that the accident was caused solely by Davenport's irresponsible and distracted driving. 10. An unconventional murder weapon. In a bizarre tragedy captured on camera, a young British woman died in 2019 after her boyfriend threw her phone at her in a fit of violent rage. 27-year-old Lloyd Kirkby and 26-year-old Levy Ogden were on their way home from a date in West Yorkshire when they started arguing. During the disagreement, Kirkby suddenly whipped his phone at Ogden, striking her in the throat and knocking her unconscious. The mother of 2 ended up dying from cardiac arrest, resulting from a brain hemorrhage, and Kirkby was charged with her murder. By then, police had been called to the couple's home over 20 times for domestic disturbances. During Kirkby's previous outbursts, Ogden had accused him of spitting on her, destroying their property, and throwing garbage everywhere. Kirkby had an established history of violence toward women, and had even spent time in prison for his actions. He wound up there once again in 2020, after pleading guilty to a reduced charge of manslaughter and receiving a 5-year sentence. The seemingly light punishment was a far cry from justice, according to Ogden's mother, who said that she fears what might happen to more innocent women when Kirkby is once again free to roam the streets. 9. Spontaneous combustion. A young woman named Alua Asetkizi Abzelbek went to bed listening to music at her Kazakhstan home one night in 2019 and was killed by her phone. The device was plugged into an outlet and sitting on her pillow near her head when the battery overheated and exploded, causing a massive head injury and killing her instantly. By the time Alua's parents found her and called for help, she had been dead for quite some time. Authorities wouldn't reveal the make and model of the phone that killed the teen. The tragedy came during a string of suspected cell phone-related deaths in Russia as well. Just moments before, 26-year-old professional poker player Lila Novikova was electrocuted and killed in her bathroom. Authorities believed she was either using her phone or blow-drying her hair when it went down. In another disturbing incident, former British soldier Jacob Cohen claimed that his Samsung phone burst into flames and flew out of his hand while he was trying to reset it. Luckily, he suffered only minor injuries and there was no significant damage done to his home. 8. Train track tragedy. 37-year-old Felon Smith was waiting for the train at Chicago's 69th Street stop in 2019 when she dropped her phone. Unluckily, it landed on the tracks below. Instead of getting help from an employee, she hopped down on the tracks herself to retrieve it, thinking she would have enough time before the next train arrived. She was unfortunately very wrong, and before she could get back onto the platform, she was fatally struck by an oncoming train. Operations along the city's Red Line were suspended for 2.5 hours, while authorities reacted to the situation. Smith's sister, Brandy Martin, acknowledged in a CBS interview that a cell phone clearly isn't worth someone risking their life over. But she also had some direct words for whoever leaked the surveillance footage of the tragedy, stating, "But we've all done some things, like the people that dropped the video from CTA, that we know we shouldn't do." Martin was also upset that no transit employees even attempted to pull Smith off the tracks before the train hit her. The Chicago Transit Authority denied any knowledge of how the footage went public and reassured everyone that it was seriously investigating the leak. 7. A deadly charge. When a 26-year-old accountant named Evgenia Shulyateva stopped answering her family's calls in 2019, her mother Vera went to her apartment to check up on her daughter. Vera entered the home, located northeast of Moscow in a smaller town called Kirovo-Chepetsk, and found Evgenia lying dead in her bathtub. Authorities determined that she was electrocuted when her phone fell into the bathtub. It was plugged into an outlet to charge at the time and delivered a fatal shock that police believed killed her instantly. They were unsure whether Evgenia was using the phone or not when the tragedy happened. For years, experts have warned people about the dangers of using phones in the bathtub or even having it close. Yet, Evgenia's death came during a concerning spike in electrocutions from people using their devices while bathing. In the months leading up to the incident, at least 4 young Russian people died with phones suspiciously close to their bathtubs, serving as a reminder of why it's a good idea to follow necessary safety warnings. 6. An ironic prediction. Texas college student Chance Both knew he shouldn't text and drive, but he did it anyway. And it ironically caught up with him in 2011. While behind the wheel one day, he sent a friend a text message saying, "I need to quit texting because I could die in a car accident." Just a few moments later, Both drove his truck off a bridge while texting and driving. The vehicle plunged 35 feet down, 10.7 meters, into a deep ravine, leaving him with a broken neck, crushed facial bones, a severe skull fracture, and traumatic brain injuries. Paramedics pulled Both from his truck right before it burst into flames, and doctors were able to bring him back to life 3 times. He miraculously lived to tell others about his close call. The young man's survival was just the beginning of what would be a long and difficult road to recovery. He had to completely relearn how to walk, talk, and complete other basic tasks, underwent extensive reconstructive surgeries, and spent over 6 months in the hospital before moving on to the next step in his recovery journey. Despite his challenges, Both was grateful to even be alive. After realizing how close he came to dying, he vowed to spend the rest of his life raising awareness about the hazards involved with texting and driving, which some experts claim is more dangerous than driving while under the influence. 5. Selfie obsession gone wrong. Like many young people, 18-year-old Anna Ursu was busy snapping selfies for her social media followers. The young Romanian woman climbed on top of a train car in the town of Lasi back in 2015 and struck a pose with one leg up in the air, only to suddenly erupt into flames. She had accidentally touched a live cable, sending 27,000 volts of shocking electricity jolting through her body. The jolt also sent her friend flying off the roof of the car. A bystander risked his own life to put out Ursu's burning clothes, but she died later at the hospital with burns covering nearly half her body. The bystander later told police he had seen the young women on top of the vehicle and warned them to be careful just seconds before the fire broke out. Her friend survived with serious injuries and told detectives that she and Ursu were trying to get the ultimate selfie and failed to even consider the dangers of what they were really doing. 4. An icy plunge. In case you haven't noticed, People will do some crazy things to get a lost cell phone back. In 2014, a 26-year-old man named Ken Huang dropped his phone into the freezing cold Chicago River in the middle of the night. He climbed over the railing along the city's riverwalk and tried to grab the device, but instead slipped and fell into the river. Two of Huang's friends jumped in to try and save him, but were unable to help, soon finding their own lives in danger. Witnesses heard the group's calls for help and called 911. A bystander named Lewis told CBS News that he spoke with Ken, who said he was clinging to a friend also in the water and that his girlfriend had fallen into the river and disappeared. Divers pulled the two men from the water, but Huang died shortly after being rescued. His friend, 23-year-old Quoc Viet Phan Huang, was taken to the hospital in critical condition and luckily pulled through. He told ABC7 that Ken died in his arms while they waited to get rescued, and that he watched helplessly as Ken's girlfriend, 21-year-old Lauren Lee, was swept away in the water's current. Lee's body was pulled from the river the next day. 3. Fatal lost phone search. In early 2015, a Canadian teenager from London, Ontario, named Jeremy Cook, left his phone in a taxi and used the Find My Phone feature on his device to track its whereabouts. He traced it to a local parking lot and went there. He encountered a car with 3 people inside. The vehicle started to drive away when it saw him, but Cook grabbed the driver's door handle in an attempt to get his phone back. Suddenly, shots were fired and he was hit by multiple bullets. The shooters abandoned the vehicle and the phone, and Cook's body was found nearby. Toronto Police Constable Victor Kwong told the Globe and Mail that law enforcement strongly advises people against confronting thieves themselves while trying to recover phones. He said that even if a lost phone is found by a Good Samaritan, it's a good idea to exchange the property at a police station because you never know what someone might try to do. About a year after Cook's death, a 23-year-old Alabama man was shot to death outside Birmingham after tracking his phone and confronting the thief who had stolen it. According to police, the victim hit a button on the tracking app that made it ring loudly and followed the sound to a nearby vehicle. He tried getting into the car to get his phone and instead took 2 bullets to the chest. 2. Deadly distraction. 33-year-old Joshua Burwell was walking along San Diego's Sunset Cliffs one day in 2015 when he stepped off a ledge and fell between 40 and 60 feet, 12 to 18 meters. Several bystanders heard his pained screams and climbed down to save him, but he died at the scene. Witnesses remember seeing Burwell staring at either a phone or camera shortly before plummeting to his death. He was clearly distracted by whatever he was looking at. Emergency responders searched the area for his device, but weren't able to find it. This is one of many alarming situations in recent years that highlight the dangers of cell phone distraction, even while walking on foot. The idea that texting could be fatal comes across to some as absurd. But as Burwell's death shows, it takes only a split second or two of lapsed judgment for things to go fatally wrong. 1. Crushed by a compactor. The morning of July 30th, 2013, started out like any other for Roger Miro and his wife Donna, who left their Chicago home to go to work expecting to see each other later on. But when Donna got home and Roger wasn't there, she started to worry. She filed a missing persons report, and police soon learned that Roger had stopped by a neighbor's apartment earlier that day to ask for a key to the apartment's trash room. The 56-year-old had lost his phone and suspected that he might have accidentally thrown it away. Without warning Roger that the trash compactor in the building had an electric sensor that triggered once garbage reached a certain level, the neighbor simply handed over the key. When officers entered the trash room, they found a ladder propped up against the compactor. Roger had climbed up to look into the chute in hopes of finding his phone, and unknowingly triggered the sensor. He lost his balance and fell in, and there was no way to stop the compactor from running through its cycle. There was also no way to escape or climb out of the machine once it was on, leaving Roger with no choice but to suffer a terribly gruesome death with crushing injuries.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather accidentally go live on Facebook while talking about how much you dislike your boss, or about how badly you miss an ex? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. See you next time. Bye.